All right, thanks for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about some current real estate topics that are in the news, and we hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Real Estate Game Plan Podcast, where we bring you inspiration, actionable steps, and knowledge to build your game plan to take your real estate business to the next level. My name is Demo.
And I'm Derek, and we are licensed real estate brokers and your hosts for this podcast. Let's get started.
All right, Derek, you've got a great article for us today about disclosing offers. I'm excited to hear about it.
Yes. All right. So on disclosures. So this article comes to us from Realtor Magazine online, and it's titled Disclosing Other Offers on Homes for Sale. So it starts off with a question, and I'm going to read this to us. It says, as a listing agent, am I required to disclose that I already have offers on the property to any agent who wants my listing, to show my listing, or any buyer who wants to see my listing? So,
wow.
Interesting question.
We hear that a lot, right?
Hear it a lot. And this is really just a blanket question. I mean, this question is, am I required to disclose it to all these folks? Answers?
What would you say, Rachel?
I would think it's yes. I mean, in real estate school, you're taught you have to disclose all offers as soon as possible to your clients. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if that's what the standard is in the industry, but that's what you're taught at school.
To the other side, right?
Yes.
Because this is to the other side.
Yeah.
So,
Sure. Now, to your client, that's true.
Yep.
But to just interested buyers or agents showing it, you don't. But now, so what the article does is it dives a little bit deeper, and it says first, two big questions. But first off, has the agent or prospective buyer even asked, are there other offers on the property? Most of the time, they don't. Mm-hmm. It's smart to ask. Could more information you have generally is going to be the better. And then secondly, because as agents, we do owe the duty of honesty. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Secondly, has the seller given us permission to share? So article says it's a great question to ask the seller when we are listing the property. If we have multiple offers and a agent or a buyer asks, do I have permission to share that information? Now, most of the time, a seller is going to say yes, because it really only improves the odds, right, that you are going to receive subsequent offers that are stronger than the first one.
Yeah, I guess if you're a professional poker player and you want to say, well, I'm going to not tell you so that you give me an offer that maybe is way higher than I can even imagine, or you're more concrete and you say, hey, the offer is at this, it needs to be above, here, or, I'm sure you're going to go into details of how agents can successfully use those words, but you're right.
Absolutely. So if asked, good conversation to have with your seller. Of course, you never want to be dishonest. Now, what the article does is it goes on to talk about if you are a realtor, not all real estate agents are, but there is Article 1 of Standard of Practice, and that basically just says that realtors, in response to inquiries from buyers or other brokers, with the seller's approval, will disclose the existence of other offers on the property. So just kind of mirroring what we had mentioned a moment ago.
Yeah, what would you recommend if an agent says, hey, I've listed my first property, we have a couple of offers on the table, another offer comes in, but before they want to push send on it, they're saying, what are the other offers on the table? What would you recommend?
I would absolutely recommend having a conversation with the seller, but I would recommend disclosing it only because from the seller's standpoint, it just drastically improves the chances you're going to get a stronger offer.
Now, what do you think the terms that are disclosed would be? Price, contingencies, or most of the time it's probably going to be about price, right?
Most of the time it's going to be about the price.
Yeah.
And so we'll hear the phrase net to seller. So that may be one way to approach it too. We've gotten offers, maybe you have gotten offers that are higher in the price, but are they asking for closing costs versus an offer that doesn't? So it's really that net that the seller is usually going to look at.
Yeah. How do you feel about that, Rachel? Asking the other agent, if you're representing a buyer, hey, tell me the terms of that offer you already have.
I mean, I think what you guys said is true. Like, it would only benefit you and your client on both sides because it's going to bring you a better understanding of what an accepted offer might look like, or what if yours doesn't get accepted, what might work and how to negotiate and all of that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. From the other side too, right? To kind of know where you need to be and if there's nothing illegal about sharing it, right? A lot of times we
Exactly.
throw around those words of, I thought that was illegal to
Right.
share. And, I thought that was against the law and I'm going to go to jail because I shared the offer.
Yes.
No.
When I think too, if as a listing agent, if you're disclosing to the other side what the other offers are coming in, it will give you an idea of what you might need to do to the actual listing, whether you need to include closing costs to your buyers, whether you need to decrease the sales price, and give you a better idea of what the market is telling you need to do to your property based on those offers.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Back to what you said, net to seller, right? Because Rachel was talking about closing costs. If you just ask for, hey, what's the current list or current prices that you have on those offers? If they don't include closing costs, maybe there's 10 grand in closing costs there, and the net to seller actually is 10 grand less, right? Like you said,
Right.
That's a big swing and a miss if you're an agent who's only keying in on that offer price.
Right. And it's not all about the price. For example, seller lease contingency, maybe one's cash, maybe one's financing. So there are definitely other angles it can go.
Yeah,
But for most people,
Yeah.
it's all about that number and that net.
that's great. So to wrap that one up, Derek, what's your
My advice would be to a seller that disclosing it can only help us. I don't see how it can really do any harm. I mean, hey, you disclose it to them and they decide they don't want to make an offer. Oh, that's awful. Well, maybe not, because maybe they weren't even going to be competitive in the first place.
Sure, that makes sense.
And Rachel, you've got a great article also.
Yeah, so my article is from realtormagazine.com as well, and it's actually about the FHA requirements being changed, and they're now going to allow renters to use on-time rental payments as an increase in their portfolio to if they have thin credit or low FICO scores, and it can actually raise their credit of up to almost 14 points.
Wow.
Which it's coming based off an Experian announcement that they will be doing the same thing, and it's supposed to help people will be able to qualify for an FHA loan and make it more flexible so that way more people are eligible and we can have more home buyers in the U.S.
That's great.
Absolutely love that.
Yeah, and now how was that reported? The consumer, the person renting?
Yeah, so based on the article, it kind of says that the renter will be responsible, of course, to enter this to their portfolio and to their applications, but they have to show a record of it, and then it'll be sent to their landlords to verify this information, and as long as everything checks out, it'll only help them and improve their credit, which as people that are trying to be first-time homeowners, it's kind of a challenge, even if they have a great credit score, to apply and qualify for FHA.
Yeah, that's a great program. I'm excited about that. Does it say when it takes effect, or it is in effect?
I think it's in effect now. It doesn't specifically say, but I believe it's starting straight away based on what the article is saying.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
we'll put that information up on the screen. I'm sure there's a lot of people that want to talk more and learn more about that. And I'm hoping that any lender out there can provide that for people. But if you need some advice there, we're happy to help too.
Definitely. Okay, Demo, so you have an article about why buyers are backing out.
Yes, this is also from Realtor Magazine Online. And this one is about the craze that we're seeing where a lot of sellers are being stuck with their property after they've been under contract for a certain period of time. So happening more and more, we're seeing it, we're hearing about it. And this article says, because of the last 2 or 3 years of market craziness, home sellers may feel like this is new, but the ability to get an offer accepted with contingencies is typically pretty standard in a balanced market. And so they also go on to say, when buyers have a contingency around, say, a home inspection, they have justification to back out of the deal if something goes wrong. So inside of a real estate contract, we all know there's multiple hurdles, as we talk to sellers about, that we have to go through. The first is the offer. The next is typically due diligence or some type of inspection. Right. And then you still have the appraisal and finance contingencies, final walkthroughs, all of those things. But what this one talks about, and I want to throw it to y'all too, is it says, what are the reasons for your home contract falling through? So they did a survey, 2022 survey, and the number one was the buyer backed out. But what percentage of all of these reasons that the home contract fell apart, what percentage would you think that would be for a buyer backed out? Rachel, what would you think?
What percentage of buyers backed out?
Yeah, and that was the reason for the contract falling through.
And you said 2022?
Yeah.
I would say like 35%.
Okay.
Because of appraisal contingencies.
Okay. Well, they actually have that as a separate line as far as like the appraisal piece.
Reason,
But
okay.
just think in general, buyer backs out of the contract in total. What would you think?
I would still say 35.
Okay. Derek?
I think it's probably higher than that. I think it's probably going to be more like 50.
That's a good guess. It's actually 54%
Oh, okay.
for that one. And then the second reason was mortgage application decline for the buyer. That was actually 42%. So that's a pretty high number there
Yeah.
for the percentage of why these contracts fell through. They had some other things in here. Buyer decided to rent instead. Buyer was afraid of upcoming recession, breach of contract, interest rates too high. So they go into all of those details. But I thought that was, pretty big. And the article says that the person they interviewed suggests that sellers maintain tight closing timelines in their sales contracts to help keep the transaction on track or avoid a long lapse in case a buyer cancels the sale. And so, yeah, that's really all you can do, right? As a seller is your negotiation power kind of stops after you've accepted that contract, right? It then turns over a lot of times to the buyer.
Right. I mean, there are certain deadlines and things the buyer needs to do, like turn in earnest money and so forth. Maybe some additional things depending on your contract. But for by and large, yes.
Yeah, they have to be tight there. So definitely, if you're listing property, if you're a seller, or if you're a listing agent, right, you want to make sure when you get that original offer, you negotiate what you want to negotiate, because after that, it kind of swings more towards the buyer's favor. And if you're a buyer's agent or you're a buyer, know that, right? Like know that you get an opportunity to inspect the home, typically in a due diligence, and we definitely highly recommend that. So there's not much you can do for some of these other factors, but it does say that this is, typical in a balanced market, which we can all understand.
Right.
Definitely. Now, does the article talk anything about earnest money? Because I know with people backing out, that's always the hot question of
Yeah.
who gets it, what determines it.
They do. But in general, we talk about earnest money here at Solid Source of making sure that you help your clients protect their money, right?
Definitely.
Earnest money being one of those. This article does talk about that a little bit by saying it doesn't always go back to buyer in certain situations. And so you definitely have to check your contract. But really, in the due diligence period, as long as there is a due diligence period, for almost all cases, the buyer would be able to get those back unless, like Derek mentioned earlier, something wasn't met by the buyer. That could be an outside liar. But if there's no due diligence, then yeah, it definitely gets tricky. And even outside of due diligence, there are certain criteria for appraisal and finance contingencies.
Right. There's simply no guarantee. And a lot of it can depend on the agreement of the parties, because usually the parties first have an opportunity. But if things, aren't working out, then who's the holder of the earnest money has a lot of power in those situations.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's it for this article. Y'all have anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we
Good stuff.
appreciate y'all watching and listening today. If there's anything we can talk about to help you understand more about real estate, please let us know. And thank you for watching and listening. You've been listening to the Real Estate Game Plan Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube and leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for listening.